Hi guys, Casey Talks EV here, and I just want to kind of make an apology to start off with. I've been extremely busy, especially over the last month at least. I've actually moved up from Hull to Sunderland for university and further study, and as a result I've had to sort out things like accommodation and stuff with the university, and basically I just haven't had any time to actually make any of the videos which I've been planning on making for at least the last few months. Luckily though, today I do have enough time to actually start off on a lot of the planned sort of notes videos which I've been making. And today's video will be on a 10,000 mile update. Now, funnily enough, this 10,000 miles actually happened, I think in late August, early September. So I was hoping to really film something for then. My car's currently now on 12,551 miles as of the 3rd of October today, so it has been quite a while. I almost was tempted not even to bother making this video, but it seems as though that a lot of the aspects, especially for new buyers and what to expect over the next coming months that you have your car, it seems though it's fairly important for me to talk about it. I have a feeling that this is going to be quite a long video, so I'm going to timestamp it again. But we're going to be looking at areas such as cost, reliability, build quality, and, well, what's happening in terms of my sort of the future 10,000 miles or so. I'm not quite sure whether I'm going to make these 10,000 mile updates a regular thing, but if I do, then this will hopefully brief you on the next 10,000 miles. Anyway, let's get started. So, anyway, to have a little bit of background on sort of what my previous car was and a lot of the comparisons I'm going to make. I know it's going to seem a little bit unfair, especially towards the Hyundai more than anything that I am comparing, but that is my only car that I've actually owned day to day, and therefore it's my only kind of reference point. So I used to have a 2014 Hyundai i20. It was 5-door. Basically, in my previous life, I used to be a support worker for adults with learning disabilities and autism. So my job was to effectively support them through their day-to-day lives. And essentially, that meant sort of taking them shopping, taking them to doctor's appointments, even going to the gym. But essentially, that meant that I needed a car which was fairly reliable, and basically, it sorted me out for the last 4 years. More recently, however, I started noticing that I was doing a lot more motorway driving. That car was absolutely atrocious. I mean, it wasn't designed to really do long-distance cruising, really. I think, it's a city car, it's a super mini, and therefore it was only really kind of designed to go in the cities and the town driving. So as a result, I really need to have a look at a new car. Originally, I was actually planning on buying a Hyundai Ioniq, or what's now known as the classic 28 kilowatt hour Ioniq. Main two reasons why is because, first of all, the Hyundai warranty has not let me down yet. I think I ended up having one problem with the i20, but in the end it just got fixed within a couple days. Not to mention the unparalleled efficiency that you got from the car. From a 28 kilowatt pack, it was absolutely amazing. In fact, actually, I think it's a 31 kilowatt hour gross and a 28 kilowatt hour net. But even still, it was unbelievably good in terms of efficiency and aerodynamics. I think the only car which actually is an improvement over the Ioniq is probably the Model 3, and that is in a completely different sort of price range compared to the Ioniq. And after watching a lot of YouTubers, more notably Zero Tailpipe, I know that he's moved to Denmark now, and Stuart D. Wright, and obviously Bjorn Neeland's videos, I've been very happy. I was quite happy to try and find one. But the major issue was just supply. It was very difficult to actually try and find a Ioniq Classic. It genuinely seemed as though that Hyundai Kia only made about 2 of them. And not to mention, that meant it kept the residual value extremely high. Not to mention, it was a very brilliant car. There was no major problems with it, and therefore you would struggle to find a car under £20,000. And even those sort of examples would be 3 years old, either a 66 plate or maybe slightly newer, maybe a 17 plate, and would have already had 30 or 40,000 miles on it, and multiple owners to boot. So basically, in the end, my search for an electric vehicle kind of gave way at that point, until, I'm not quite sure how I discovered it, but I discovered the ZS EV. In terms of how I actually kind of made the choice, really, I had a look at obviously the specs that came out officially via MG, so battery pack size and the WLTP range, which was 163 miles. I knew that the WLTP was a lot more representative compared to the NEDC range, so realistically I knew that I would probably get at the bare minimum 100 miles out, even with even including the worst weather conditions. And I knew that that would pretty much suit my needs, which I'll probably talk over in later on in the video. But yeah, pretty much, I actually test drove the petrol model. I test drove the 1 litre turbo petrol, and just for practicality and just to make sure it isn't a complete slob on the road, I knew full well that it would be significantly changed for the EV, and it was absolutely fine from there. The boot was quite big as well, and it was fairly practical. Rear legroom was pretty exceptional, actually, especially compared to my Hyundai. But afterwards, I actually then requested in October time, in October 2019, I requested the test drive of the production EV model, and by December I actually got my car. So that's pretty much it. I may have gone over this before in my first ever introduction video, but I thought I'd get everyone up to speed. So the next section, effectively, we'll start off with the update, I guess. So 10,000 miles in, I think the first thing we'll talk about is the cost, because I think that's probably the more pressing matters that everyone has when buying an electric vehicle. So I have actually a spreadsheet that predominantly records cost as well as my monthly mileage. The one thing it doesn't include, however, is efficiency, or miles per kilowatt hour sort of readings per month. The main reason why is because it got to the point, I think it got to about March time, when I suddenly realised that because a third of my charging in total was actually free, it became quite difficult to figure out how much charging, how much sort of the efficiency of it, and how many kilowatt hours I was getting from individual charges. So I kind of gave up on that. But the most important aspect is that my fuel cost for 10,000 miles, although now I've done 12,500, but for the 10,000 was £205. So this includes home charging, so this includes my old plan, which was on Simplicity Energy, as well as in May 2020 I actually migrated over to Octopus Agile. It also includes fast and rapid charging, so from the likes of Ingenie, Instavol, Alpha Power, and Ecotricity, and also my fuel cost for Polar Plus. Now, the reason why I'm saying that and explicitly saying that is because that £205 does not include the Polar Plus membership. There's multiple reasons why. I felt as though it will actually be more appropriate if I assumed that I got charged monthly for it, which would mean over 10 months, £78.50. And the main reason why is because with the first 3 months anyway, you get it for free. That's normally to test suitability. I quite like the fact that Ecotricity gives you that option. Not to mention that due to the national lockdown, we actually got an extra 2 months free. So in the end, I got 5 months out of the 10 months that I probably should have paid for free. And for this calculation, add on £78.50. So effectively, my total fuel cost is around £285, or 2.8p per mile. This compares extremely favourably to my Hyundai. Obviously, this is a much smaller car, and it's a petrol car, but effectively that car cost me over, in terms of last year, over 5,500 miles per mile, cost me 11.4p. So effectively I was saving around 8.5p a mile, which in my opinion is pretty good. Furthermore, looking at, for example, the ZS petrol, or the 1 litre turbo petrol automatic, I actually had a look at the which real MPG figures. People are reckoning they're getting around 39.4, which are £1.15 per litre. You're looking at a fuel cost of 13.5p a mile. So comparing, that is definitely more representative and more like for like. Comparing that, you would be saving nearly, well, 10.5p a mile, which is, what, £1,050 per 10k miles you cover. So the savings are basically even higher. Personally, at the end of the day, the main objective of me converting to EVs is the fuel savings, and as you can tell, for me at least, we've got to about 9-10 months in, and I've already saved around about £900 probably by now, maybe 950, and and that is definitely one of the incentives to go electric. So, and I think as a result, I've kind of proven that there is definitely a cost saving with respect to sort of just fuel, even when you consider that I've been charging via, I've included, for example, the Polar Plus membership. If you forego that, as well as if you charge a lot more at home, then obviously your cost per mile would be significantly lower than mine. Or if you utilise a lot more free charging, for example, at your workplace, that cost can actually go quite significantly lower. So I kind of want to also go through a side note on whether Polar Plus is worth it. I felt as though that this would be quite an appropriate section to go over. If I were to give a very quick answer, unfortunately, it really is dependent on your usage. It really is dependent on whether you do use a lot of paid for rapid charging, especially at places like Polar, using the Polar network. The most important thing I'd say is that compared to Ecotricity, there are actual chargers quite close to the major trunk roads in the UK. They are a little bit away, especially compared to Ecotricity, right at the motorway service areas or the motorway services. But essentially, they're not really too far away, maybe a couple miles out at most, and not to mention the cost saving compared to Ecotricity. I mean, they charge 30p a kilowatt hour, whereas with Polar Plus you're paying 15. Assuming you've kind of paid full price for the year, which for the first year at least won't be the case because you'll get 3 months membership for free, just to try out things like suitability. That would cost you £95 a year. Therefore, you would realistically have to use 950 kilowatt hours a year in order to offset the cost of the membership compared to Polar Instant, or 650 kilowatt hours a year if you were using contactless. Now, the one thing that should be said, however, is that you get an RFID card. This RFID card is definitely more reliable compared to, especially contactless readers. Some Ultra chargers, for example, don't have contactless readers. And then there's also this problem with Apple Pay and Google Pay, I think, where it will actually swap out your card details, so it's a bit of a pain to stop a charge once you've started it. And with an RFID, apart from when I've struggled to get a connection, well, the Ultra chargers struggle to get a connection, and I can only remember one point where that's happened, it's much easier to use the RFID card. Also, the one thing that gets kind of missed out quite a lot is that a lot of these 7 kilowatt fast charging points, you kind of need the RFID card to actually access them. They don't use contactless. I think you can use instant on some of them, but effectively the RFID card gives you the option to utilize across the board. And a lot of these charges are actually free for Polar Plus users, or I've yet to find a charger that actually charges me 12p a kilowatt hour. Most of them are just free on Polar Plus, and this may have not been too much of a problem when I was in Hull, for example, when there were barely any 7 kilowatt fast charging points on the Polar network. But when I've come to now Sunderland, I've noticed that my nearby charger, which is about a 10-15 minute walk away, is absolutely free. And I know that you can activate it via Charge Your Car, but I use my Polar Plus membership a lot more sort of across the UK, so I'm going to be keeping that for now. And essentially that's absolutely free to charge. So yes, and that means as well that your cost to offset the membership, amount of kilowatt hours that you need to offset the membership goes down even further. But yeah, pretty much it really is ultimately dependent on whether you do use Polar chargers a lot, or you can shift your usage to Polar chargers a lot. To be quite honest, I knew full well from the start of it I was going to use Polar chargers because they were per kilowatt hour the best priced sort of rapid chargers, apart from obviously free, in the UK, and as a result I've been very happy with it. In terms of reliability, they've been quite good. I like the fact that they have live availability as well, and I know that obviously a lot of people may have problems with the 24-hour customer service, but whenever I've needed to call them, they've seemed to be absolutely fine, really. Maybe a long wait every so often, 10-15 minutes, maybe even 20 minutes, but in the grand scheme of things, I think they've been fairly good to me at least. Of course, that's not... I can assure you I've heard a lot more stuff about Polar, but for me at least, they've been absolutely fine. So in terms of servicing, obviously I probably should mention that this car hasn't actually gone through its first service yet, even at 12,500 miles. The service intervals for the ZS EV are 1 year and 15,000 miles. This actually, well, compared to my Hyundai, this is definitely a lot longer. My old Hyundai was 1 year and 10,000, which seemed to be the going rate for petrol cars anyway. But obviously, because my car hasn't gone through its first service, I can't really make any comments on pricing. I kind of expect it, because obviously it is a main dealer, to be more expensive than if I went to an independent dealer. I probably should note that I will put a link in the description as well for the website of all of the independent dealers which are wanting or allowed to service electric vehicles. I've definitely heard a lot of people say and recommend sort of going to independent dealers, and I think that needs more kind of representation. For the record, I'm also not on a servicing plan. I completely forgot to mention it when I first bought the car, but I hope that this time around I am likely going to take my car to Maple Garage anyway, or when I'm able to go back to Hull at least. Also for the record, my i20 didn't actually have any major problems throughout its 4 years, and any issues were covered by warranty anyway. By extension, I'm not kind of expecting any costs necessarily, like any exorbitant costs when it comes to this car. I've not had any particular fault codes or anything, so the only thing I've really been taking this car back to the dealer for are for the updates, like for example the smart charging one in December and the comfort one. In fact, I've talked over the comfort update if you haven't already watched the video. Shameless plug there. Anyway, but as I said, the motor and the battery are the only real things which are major components. When they go wrong, it's going to be quite expensive, but they are warranted for 7 years and 70k miles. So, and I'm sure that I'll probably get rid of the car before then anyway. But in terms of servicing, I can't really talk too much about that. I'm sure that there are a lot more higher mileage cars than my one at this point. I'll probably make an update in the comment section of this video when my car goes for the first service, and I'll make a note on the sort of the cost for the first year. But apart from that, servicing, I don't think there's really much to report on that one. So in terms of refinement and build quality, I think I'll make a couple background sort of points here. My driving's kind of been 50-50 in terms of purely motorway long distance driving and town and country driving, respectively. The one thing I'll say is that at 70 miles an hour, the wind noise is definitely noticeably more restrained compared to my i20, although that shouldn't be a contest. That car was ridiculously loud, as I've said in the background part of this video, compared to basically any car that I've sat in. In fact, actually, I would go as far as saying there must be something wrong with that one. I mean, I've never sat in another i20, or I can't seem to remember how bad the wind noise was, but basically that was one of the main reasons I thought to switch my car over. MG Pilot's just made motorway driving just a walk in the park. It's so easy at this point. You get on the motorway, set it to 70 miles an hour, set the MG Pilot on, and it basically just drives itself. I mean, okay, you have to keep your hands on the wheel, but it's been absolutely fine. Overall, to be honest, I'd say it, like, I used to get very kind of annoyed when driving long distances, just because, you know, I used to be absolutely tired when I got to my destination, whereas with this car, I noticed this especially on the Polar Plus 550 mile trip down to Southampton and back. And what I noticed was it genuinely, I wouldn't say it's brought the enjoyment, it's not really not a lot of enjoyment driving on the motorway, but it's just made it so much more relaxed. So when I get to my destination, I'm not tired. I don't want to go immediately to bed. In fact, actually, this was mentioned in passing because I absolutely loved Alloam's video in his 22 kilowatt hour Zoe. In fact, actually, he's got a ZS EV now as well. But yeah, I mean, of course, I can go realistically nearly twice the distance as the Zoe 22, but after sort of an hour and a half, 2 hour stint driving and then stopping for 40 minutes, you just feel so much more relaxed. And that is a huge intrinsic benefit, I think, after, and I've only really just realised that after sort of getting into the swing of things with my car and things. So, in terms of build quality itself, nothing has fallen off. I mean, for example, the rear bumper is still on the back of the car, which is probably one up on a Tesla. You can tell the car, though, is definitely built to a price, especially in certain areas. Like, for example, the top of the instrument cluster, for example, is not, it's actually quite a nice soft touch plastic, but a couple areas where I know that a lot of people rest their arm on, so the top of the door seal or the window seal, that's quite hard plastic. But then when you go down onto the place where I'm guessing they kind of assume you're going to put your arm on, so, well, the armrest where the controls are, it's, well, a softer sort of fake leather. Any other places, anywhere that you kind of actually like use, so for example the steering wheel, where you rest your hand on the armrest, and as well as the other where the window controls are, they're all soft. So actually, to be honest, everywhere that counts is certainly more premium, I guess a lot of people will say. Overall though, if I was going to compare it to the Ioniq, to be honest, obviously I've only used the Ioniq on a short sort of test drive, whereas I've had this car for 10 months. The one thing to say is that I don't think there's much in it. I really regret saying, I remember commenting on a video saying, you know what, I don't have any rattles in this car. No, it turns out that once I turned off the music and a couple weeks after I said that, there is definitely a rattle somewhere. Obviously people say that because with an electric car there's no engine to drown that out. So I'm not quite surprised, but because I started listening to more podcasts, the music, I can definitely hear it somewhere, and I might get that looked into on my first service. But to be honest with you, it's not the end of the world really. I mean, I've not had any serious, as I said before, I've not had any serious issues with the car that needed to be immediately taken to a dealer. In terms of other aspects like rust, that was a bit of a touchy subject on the Facebook group at least. As far as I'm aware, I can't seem to find any in the really noticeable places. I've kind of looked under the car over the last, about a month ago I kind of looked properly under the car, there was nothing really there. The only area that is really present is the brake disc rotor area, and it turns out that actually seems to be normal for any car. It's just that in my previous car I didn't have alloys, so it was a lot less noticeable with steel wheels on it. If anything comes up on the first service, I'll definitely let everyone know, especially underneath the car where I really can't get a particularly great look at it without putting it on a ramp. The charging flap hasn't broken off yet, and this is very important because I think this is the most short-sighted bit of the ZS. The charging flap's only warranted for a year. Technically it's still got 2 months to go, or to prove itself, but basically it hasn't fallen off, it hasn't broken yet. Another aspect is that the 12-volt battery hasn't needed to be replaced. This is I'm going to say it's a fairly early car. I picked it up in December, and I think the first cars came off late September time. As a result, there was a couple issues with the 12-volt battery basically draining. It seemed as though they only affected cars with the SAIC branded battery. This car actually has a Varta branded battery, and I'm not quite sure whether my dealer swapped it out before I took the car, but this Varta one hasn't let me down yet. I also have a hardwired dash cam kit for the next base dash cam I have. That hasn't caused any major problems or 12-volt battery drain issues. However, I will say that I haven't really left the car for too long off. So the most I've probably ever left it is about a week, and there hasn't seemed to be too many issues with that. I'm sure that this car hasn't had the most latest updates and everything. I'm sure there is a BMS update that needs to be done in order for example, the car to work with the Rolex Smart Charger properly. But obviously I have Bill's aftermarket board, so that means I just haven't had enough time to kind of undo it, and obviously I live in Sunderland now. So I really haven't been paying attention to updates, unfortunately, but I'm hoping by the first service I will be able to kind of go over that with the servicing people. But essentially, this car really hasn't had any problems with the first 10,000 miles. It's taken me right across the country, and, well, at least England at least, and there's just not, I haven't been at the side of the road or anything, I haven't needed to call recovery, for example. So, yeah, I mean, I've been absolutely fine with the refinement and build quality, so, yeah, that's pretty much it. So, what's in it for the next 10,000 miles, or to the next sort of update video? The major change is that between the first 10k and the next is basically as I said before, my circumstances have changed quite significantly. I'm still a student, however, I will also be partaking in a regular commute. Second of all is that I don't have access to my home charger back in Hull anymore. I'm very reliant now on the public charging network, so these are the likes of obviously my Polar membership and some of the other chargers in the area. I do, as I said before, I do have a charger about 15-minute walk away, 7 kilowatt point that I can access using my Polar Plus card. This is more kind of locale specific, but please don't try and use any of the Sunderland charge your car chargers, because every single one I went to didn't work at all. Rumour has it though, I actually called Polar up and I explained to them, look, none of them worked. The weirdest thing is on ZapMap, it looks really good. I'll overlay it here, but it looks really kind of charger dense until you realise none of them work. And I gave actually a quick call to them, and they had told me that Sunderland City Council may be changing over to another provider, sort of similar to what Greater Manchester have done. And as a result, these chargers don't work with the Polar cards anymore. I think they might work with your charge your car one, but as I said before, I'm not going to get one anyway. But luckily, the charge your car one that I do go to frequently, the 15-minute walk one, works absolutely fine with my Polar Plus card. So on top of this, I'm actually going to be, as I said, a lot more reliant on the public charging network. And what I've noticed, that every single supermarket around me actually has at least a 7 kilowatt point. So Sainsbury's and Tesco all use Pod Point, and the exception is the Lidl one. So that one's a Pod Point, but it's a rapid charger. The likelihood as well is that I'll be starting a new commute in the car, so it's not too far away. It's only about a 10-20 mile round trip. I probably could cycle it, but there we go. And that is obviously going to be substantially different than what I used to do, which was kind of, it was basically a lot of sort of personal driving, social personal driving. Now it's going to be more for work purposes. I did actually, for the last 3 months, do a pizza delivery job in the car, and spoiler alert, it worked absolutely fine. And I might talk about it in a future video, but now obviously I'm moving towards a regular commute. But I think that's about it, really. As I said, overall, the 10,000 miles in this car have been kind of, everything's kind of been expected. Obviously, I've had to plan a bit more, and I've done a video on sort of planning a long-distance journey on ZapMap, which I'll probably link here. There's plenty of videos, and I'm sorry, but there's plenty of shameless plugs in this video. But essentially, this car's been absolutely fine for the last 10,000 miles, and hopefully, if anything comes about now, I'll definitely document it. But that's pretty much it. If you've found this video informative at least, please make sure you like the video. If you've disliked it, dislike it. Please leave a comment below if you if you have any video suggestions. At the moment, I do have a couple videos in the pipeline, but I do really want to hear a lot of people's suggestions on what they want to see from the car, just because, it's great, it's great to have such a large community kind of watching my videos. I mean, I think now it's about, 430. I'm really grateful for it. So, but yeah, that's about it. So, thank you very much for watching, and talk to you later.